Nations can survive sanctions, they can endure wars, but no country, no civilization can survive an empty river. The Nile is Egypt's lifeline. It provides 97% of the country's fresh water, feeding over 110 million people who live in the desert. Without it, Egypt dies. But upstream, Ethiopia has built a dam so massive it can be seen from space. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD, has the potential to transform Ethiopia into Africa's powerhouse, or to plunge the Nile basin into war. On the banks of the Blue Nile, near Ethiopia's border with Sudan, stands a wall of concrete almost 500 feet high. Behind it, a vast reservoir is swallowing valleys and villages. For Ethiopians, it's a symbol of pride, independence, and progress. For Egyptians, it's a ticking time bomb, a single structure deciding whether their fields stay green or turn into dust. If Ethiopia fills the dam too quickly, Egypt's water levels could collapse, crops could fail, millions might be forced to migrate. This isn't just about energy or water, it's about survival. And survival in geopolitics often means war. The conflict isn't new, it's a century in the making. Back in 1929, colonial Britain signed treaties giving Egypt almost absolute rights to the Nile. Ethiopia was excluded. For decades, Egypt acted as if the Nile was its private inheritance. In 1959, Egypt and Sudan signed another treaty dividing the water between themselves, again without Ethiopia. But Ethiopia never forgot. By the 21st century, Ethiopia's leaders declared enough. They would build their own future, literally on the river. In 2011, as Egypt was paralyzed by revolution, Ethiopia launched the GERD project. This crisis is bigger than two nations. It's structural. First, the geography. The Nile has two main tributaries, the White Nile from Central Africa and the Blue Nile from Ethiopia. The Blue Nile provides almost 85% of the water that reaches Egypt. Ethiopia holds the tap. Second, the economics. Ethiopia sees GERD as salvation, a $5 billion project that could generate 6,000 megawatts of electricity, enough to light up the Horn of Africa and export power to neighbors. For one of the world's poorest nations, it's a dream of sovereignty. But for Egypt, the Nile isn't a dream, it's existence. No Nile, no Egypt. And that makes compromise almost impossible. Third, the politics. Leaders in both Cairo and Addis Ababa use the dam as a nationalist rallying cry. Any concession looks like weakness. That's the trap. Diplomacy is seen as betrayal, while escalation wins applause. Today, the GERD is nearly complete. Ethiopia has already carried out multiple fillings of the reservoir, often without warning Egypt. Each time, Cairo's government warns of serious consequences. But those warnings have limits. Egypt has threatened airstrikes, but hitting the dam would risk catastrophic flooding of Sudan, Egypt's fragile neighbor. Sudan itself is torn, sometimes siding with Egypt, other times with Ethiopia, because the dam could both stabilize floods and threaten its own water. Meanwhile, the United States, the African Union, and even the World Bank have tried mediating. Talks collapse, restart, collapse again. No binding agreement has ever been reached, and in the background, climate change is turning up the pressure. The Nile's flow is becoming less predictable. Droughts cut deeper. Populations keep growing. By 2050, Egypt could add 30 million more people, all needing water the Nile may not provide. So far, every solution has been a bandage on a bullet wound. Egypt insists on guarantees that Ethiopia won't drain the Nile too fast. Ethiopia rejects what it calls colonial-era privileges. The African Union declares progress after every round of talks, but little changes. And Egypt's own government has made the crisis worse. Instead of reforming water use, where 80% goes to thirsty crops like rice and sugarcane, Cairo doubles down, farming as if water is endless. Ethiopia, meanwhile, frames GERD as a sacred project. Criticism is painted as betrayal. The dam is not just a piece of infrastructure. It's become part of Ethiopia's national identity. That makes compromise politically toxic. The danger isn't just war between two states. its collapse across an entire region. If Egypt loses the Nile, mass migration could push millions toward the Mediterranean, unleashing new refugee waves into Europe. Sudan could be swallowed by instability. Ethiopia, already fractured by ethnic conflict, could see water disputes fuel rebellion. And the superpowers are watching. China helped finance parts of GERD. The US backs Egypt diplomatically. Gulf states like Saudi Arabia and the UAE invest heavily in Nile agriculture. The river has become a global chessboard.